Greetings! In a previous video, I was talking about what it was like to be at a gig in San Francisco in the mid-80s with my band Clown Alley and some fairly wild individuals from the local scene. There was a lot of scenesters there who were in a lot of other bands, some that became famous, some that remained rooted in obscurity like my own band, Clown Alley. However, we are going to have another revisit to Clown Alley because eventually I'm going to break down this record right here, which is the one and only Clown Alley record that came out in 1986. So I will talk about that presently, but I will talk about the wonderful journey that led to this happening first of all. So, first of all, I would like to go back to the year 1980. Probably none of you even remember the year 1980 unless you're as old as I am. Well, actually, I should go back a little bit earlier. I should go back to 1978, a couple of years before 1980. And that year, something important happened, which is directly related to this record here. And that is when I was attending the California Institute of the Arts in beautiful Valencia, California. I met somebody named Lori Black. Now, some of you out there may know of Lori as the bass player for the Melvins, but before that, she was more important to me personally as my partner and girlfriend starting in about 1978, I would say. So I met her. We shared a mutual interest in music, film, art in general, all other kinds of stuff like that. And we actually ended up moving in together, first in fabulous Newhall, California, which was the little town that was close to CalArts, also famous for being the town that I believe William S. Hart, the famous silent movie cowboy, had his ranch in. Anyway, we met, we shared our interest in music, and Lori indicated that she was really interested in learning how to play the bass. So since I was a guitar player and had been since the age of 10 or 11, I said I would be more than happy to show her how to play the bass, and started teaching her the fundamentals of how to do that, what to listen for in music. Although she'd already been playing music via the piano and the guitar a little bit since she was about 5 years old, and both her mom and dad played music a little bit, so she grew up in more or less a semi-musical household. Sure enough, a few years later I found myself moving to said Hollywood, California. The lights, the glamour, the movie stars, the lies that are presented about that particular place. And I remember moving there very specifically because the day that I moved into the apartment that I found was election night 1980. And anybody who can send their brains back to that time will know that that was the very pinnacle of what was going to become the Ronald Reagan years for the next 8 years. Lori had gotten a lot better at the bass, and she had also been practicing singing along to her favorite records, which were things like X, X-Ray Specs, Talking Heads, stuff like that. And she was thinking about making a go of actually becoming a lead singer. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, this isn't going to work because Lori is not I'm going to stand in the front and yell person. She was always a I want to hide in the back and not be noticed person, but still be on the stage. So I was kind of interested in my mind to see how this was going to work out. Lori wasn't still quite confident enough to actually play bass in the little bands that I was putting together. And So I respected her idea about wanting to sing. We had a little space that we rented a couple of times a week, a rehearsal or practice space, and we were playing with various different people. By that point, I had actually met Cliff Martinez, who was the drummer for the Weirdos at the time, and was also the drummer in a band that Lydia Lunch had called 1313. I think he plays on her record, I believe. And he had also got in a little band called the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the time. Ended up playing on their first two records, I think. So anyway, I found another singer, went in the studio and started doing some recording, recorded a few pretty horrible songs, and then actually recorded 4 or 5 songs with Cliff that I felt better about, that Lori actually sang vocals on. I still have recordings of these songs, and they will probably never see the light of day because Lori would be appalled if I expose these to the air, I do believe. So we put in about 2 or 3 more years in Hollywood, which seemed to just get progressively worse. Our experiences there were often really challenging until they just ended in complete disbelief of what reality had served up for us. And we moved up to the Bay Area, and Lori's parents were really kind in suggesting that we live in sort of a bungalow behind their house, which was a converted horse barn. And they said, you guys just live there. You know, there's no pressure at all. You know, till you get yourself settled, we'll help you out with whatever you need. And we were extremely grateful for that and appreciated that after some of the things we'd been through in Los Angeles. And Lori was starting to feel pretty confident about playing bass at this point, and she had moved up to a nicer bass, which became the famous Ibanez Bean bass that she used in Clown Alley and also within the Melvins when she started to play with them later in the 80s. So once we lived in San Francisco, we started looking for people to play with. The first drummer we found was a guy named Neil, and he was from San Jose, I think. And then we started looking for a singer, which we found in the great Dave Duran, and Dave got involved and liked the way the band sounded. And so one of the things that we did was starting to write songs together. I pretty much wrote most of the songs myself, and then I'd bring them in. Dave and Neil would contribute their parts. Lori pretty much was playing along with me at the time without venturing too much outside of that. But she was gaining confidence and being willing to throw in her own ideas, which were always great and interesting. So after we'd been together maybe a year or so, started to play out a little bit. We recorded this demo tape. And I designed this label myself using Letraset. Everything had to be rubbed out onto a piece of paper, lined up. You can see how this is a fairly horrible job that I did because some of the stuff is crooked. We've got the old English lettering, predating some of the metal band stuff, of course. And we've got some jaunty little characters on the side. I also did make an actual sticker that you can see here, ridiculously complicated. We made a t-shirt for that also, and you couldn't read the band name on the t-shirt. So once again, my design capabilities left something to be considered. However, everybody loved the sticker and they loved the shirt, and they spent hours and hours gazing upon it going, what is it? Within about a year and a half after playing out, Neil had decided that he wanted to move on. Things weren't quite moving along as fast as he wanted them to move along, and we were just going, well, this is a good time, and we're just starting to make connections with the scene in the Bay Area, San Jose, the entire Bay Area, starting to make friends in other bands, playing with other bands, etc. And we were posting little flyers in the record stores like Rough Trade and places like that that look like this. And yes, our bar was very low. We just needed a drummer that was dedicated and loud. We put our own phone number on there without even the area code. So we weren't thinking too far afield about this. And we did actually have somebody answer the ad. I think he was even possibly a Stanford man. Justin Clayton was his name. And he was an early adopter of a vegan diet. He was the only vegan I knew at the time, and possibly the first vegan I ever met. When he was describing his diet to me, I thought it was an insane diet. I said, "How are you alive even?" And he said, "Well, I just have to pay attention," which he did. And he was long and lean. He must have been about 6'1" or something, like a beanpole, and was a great player. Very almost kind of robotic, mechanical, but right on the money. Played the same thing, exactly the same every single time, and was incredibly reliable. I'm not even sure that he drank or participated in any kind of recreational materials. I think maybe he was pretty much straight edge at the time, which was a great thing because that just meant that he could be depended upon and he would play consistently well all the time, which is what he did. So we started playing around a lot and getting progressively bigger and bigger shows. You may notice in the sort of montage I put in the very beginning of this video some of the flyers indicating a lot of the bands that we played with: MDC, 7 Seconds, Neurosis was a young and upcoming band at the time, English Dogs. We would do these shows at a place called The Farm. You could see 13 bands for $6. It was quite incredible. The Farm was kind of a co-op in San Francisco, and they would basically let anybody rent the place for a couple of $100s. So if you put a few hundred people in there paying $6, everybody in all the bands could get paid. These were alcohol-free shows. Everybody had an awesome time. And there were quite a few of those shows. I remember doing one sound gig at one of those shows, and I think I did sound for 10 bands in a row. It was kind of an amazing feat, and I was very proud of myself at the end, and nobody even noticed that I was doing sound because they were all enjoying the shows so much. So we got to the point where we had enough material to put a record out, and this kind of coincided with my meeting Victor Hayden, who was interested in recording local bands, and he and I talked about putting a label together, and our kind of ethos for the label being making great recordings as cheap as possible and just kind of putting Bay Area bands on the map. And we thought this was a great idea, and so that's what we started to do. I had a few connections in the area, and one of them was somebody named Kent Jolly, who worked for Southern Distribution in London, or she went to work for them, and called me up and said, "Hey, if you ever want any distribution for anything you're doing, let me know, and I'll talk to the guy here," whose name was John Loader, a great person, and really a legend in independent music in the UK. And he called me up and said, "Yeah, let's do it. This sounds like a cool thing you're doing." So that's what we did. And I believe the Clown Alley record was maybe one of the first records that came out on the label. Maybe the Melvins came out before it, but this does have the matrix number 101 on it, I believe, which is the first matrix number for the label. So a bunch of these things got done close together. Clown Alley might have been the first one to be recorded. Incidentally, this is a great, nice sort of surreal Dadaesque cover by Victor Hayden, who was also my partner in the label. And now I'm going to talk about some of the songs on this actual record. All right, so it's been interesting listening to this record again. I've not listened to this record in, well, since I actually just made a needle drop of it for my Patreon page, and I think I made a needle drop of it for my Bandcamp page. But this is the first time I've listened to it in a long time. Generally with most things that I make, I spend so much time listening to it during the actual creation of it that there's really no need to go back and listen to it for the 700th time. So once again, just to remind everybody, this record came out in 1986 and it has never been repressed on vinyl. It did come out, there was a Southern Lord re-release of it on CD maybe about 20 years ago or something like that. But since these two production runs, it's never been repressed. So if you want to find one, you're probably going to have to do a little bit of a treasure hunt for it. Anyway, this was recorded to analog 2-inch tape at a studio called Starlight Studio in Richmond, California. Now this was in the East Bay, and Richmond at the time, now I think even Pixar's there, there's a Whole Foods there, I don't know what else is there, but Richmond in 1986 was one of the crackiest places that you could visit in the East Bay. I think that this studio even had a chain link fence with barbed wire around the top. And I think they did rap stuff and they did metal bands. And I think maybe even the great engineer Sylvia Massey worked there for a while. But if any of you folks out there have memories of recording at Starlight or hanging out at Starlight or just drinking beer in the parking lot of Starlight while your friends recorded there, I'd love to hear some stories about that. I think the Melvins mixed gluey porch treatments there and Ozma, and we also did the Sacrilege record there, Party with God. We recorded and mixed that there. So amongst all you people, you must be able to have some memories of that. And the engineer on this record was Carl Herlorsson. He was a Swedish guy, awesome engineer, totally excited about what we were doing. He engineered gluey porch treatments also, which we recorded in Sausalito at Studio D. And he mixed Ozma at Starlight and recorded the Sacrilege record and mixed that with me also. So he had a long reach throughout all of these recordings, and one of the main reasons why these recordings sound like they do is because of Carl Herlorsson. And Carl, if you're out there, hey, and these records are classic now, and a lot of that's to do with you, so thank you. What I'm realizing, listening to this record in a different way, a very sort of abstract and objective way, which I haven't thought about in a long time, is that I think Clown Alley was kind of a protest band, really, in the great tradition of a lot of California bands, and also that sort of punk rock tradition, which started coming about in the mid-70s, which I think also harkened back to 60s protest music, maybe early Bob Dylan folk music. This is really just a big continuum reaching forward from the late 50s all the way to the 80s. I guess rap could be considered protest music too, so this could be just another link in that chain. So a lot of the songs on here do have semi-political themes to them, concepts of hopelessness and nihilism. In this first song, The Lie, which I wrote the lyrics to. Resounding choruses, when hell freezes over, when oceans are dry, when the world stops turning, I will believe the lie. How do you like that iambic pentameter? There's a lot of rhyming that goes on in the stuff that I'm doing here because I'm just starting to really work on lyrics for the first time, so I'm feeling my way through writing lyrics, as they say. So this song, actually, The Lie, starts out with a carousel recording, and I went to Golden Gate Park with my Sony Pro Walkman cassette recorder with a nice little microphone that I bought to go with it, and a cassette of Maxell 2XLS chrome tape. And I sat there for about an hour just recording the carousel. And the sound at the beginning of this tune is actually that carousel sound. So that's a real piece of San Francisco nostalgia baked into the very beginning of that track. And then it's got kind of me attempting to do a sort of Bay Area metal riff, which all made my metal friends laugh with hilarity because I was pretty much incapable of doing that. But I gave it the old college try. And the song ended up being a favorite in our set, and Dave delivered the vocal really excellently. The next song on here is called Unplugged, and this has some really cool stream of consciousness lyrics by Dave on it. I can give you the entire lyric content right now, which is fall down, get up, run, uphill, fall down, get burned, get up, run, unplugged, turn me back on, unplugged, turn me back on. And this is great because this has the essence of Dave's personality right in the middle of it. I mean, that's it. Dave was a bike messenger in San Francisco, so that was basically his whole day pretty much, I would imagine, falling down and getting up on his bike, being threatened by cab drivers, delivery drivers, the police, other bike messengers. I mean, basically it was just a day of threats. And then eventually when I became a cab driver, I chimed in by rolling down my window and yelling at bike messengers also, who were just completely oblivious of street signs, traffic lights, any other human that got in their way delivering the package, which needed to be delivered on time, every time. So the next song is a song called In the Cartoon. And this has more great lyrics by Dave, and I seem to remember that Dave and I shared a love of old Warner Brother cartoons and MGM cartoons. And at that time, a lot of those cartoons were kind of hard to see. These were the 1980s, mid-1980s, so you couldn't just go to the video store and pick up a VHS of Tex Avery's favorites. I think maybe they were just starting to get on big companies' radars where they should start to reissue stuff like that. But anyway, we could talk about Droopy, and we could talk about the wolf that was besotted by the ladies and all that kind of stuff. And we had that kind of language in our background that we shared. And so this is a song about being inside of a cartoon, which is probably yet another song, I would imagine, that relates to possibly being really high as a bike messenger, because Dave did partake at the time. And I would imagine some of the consumables back then were probably great for anxiety control and whatever else. Anyway, his lyrics are great on this. And they go, things are gooey again, bending and stretching. Muscles elastic, feeling like Scooby again. My legs spinning, going nowhere. My universe shrinks, my brain won't think. My face blows up, the big ones laugh. What does it mean, Dave? Maybe you can chime in and let me know. But it was great. Crashing and burning, bouncing and jumping, dealing with goons again, in the cartoon again. Once again, iambic pentameter rears its ugly head. Okay, the next song on here is a song called On the Way Up. And this is a song that Lori and Dave and I wrote collectively. It came out of kind of jamming on a particular guitar riff that I have, which is the main kind of riff of the song. This is another song about Dave being a bike messenger, probably. And anybody who has a job that is in 9 to 5 or 12 to 8 or just a solid 40-hour-a-week job can relate to. And the lyrics to this are, the chorus is great, and this had a really good singable chorus, and people would sing it at the shows after the record came out, and that was always nice to hear people singing along with it. Woke up, went to work, came home, ate, drank, slept. There it is, there's your 40-hour week. And everybody out there has jobs. That's it. Clock says 9 and I wish it was later. Push 25 and the act begins. Talk about the weather in an elevator. On our way up the big glass phallus. And we had a little bit of a conversation about that because originally I think it was penis. And I said, well, Dave, you know, we won't get any airplay if we use the word penis. Like, this is headed directly for the charts, you know. All kinds of airplay coming out of this thing, especially in the mid-80s. So I said, well, let's just write phallus on there just in case. Dave says phallus in the actual recording, and I believe there was some eye rolling as he said it at me directly. Penis, phallus, really, if he wanted to be controversial, I guess he would have just said cock, but is that even controversial anymore? I don't think it is. So, last verse, 40 neckties, 80 cold, cold eyes, too much to lose, no reason to stop. Bend over, son, you've been promoted. Don't you know the cream always rises to the top? Great lyrics, Dave. I mean, that is awesome. I'm not the only person who thinks those are awesome because actually this song On the Way Up did become influential in a few different unsuspecting ways. One of which is when the journals of Kurt Cobain were published after his demise, he would make all these lists of songs that were his favorite songs, and I think he had a whole bunch of these lists. I was on tour maybe 10 years ago. Van broke down. We were in a mall somewhere waiting for the van to get fixed at one of those Sears auto shops. And it was going to be a few hours. We were standing around in a Barnes & Noble, and I just started looking at stuff. And Kurt Cobain's journals had just been published at that point. So just for kicks, I thought I'd just start leafing through it, and started looking at some of the lists of his favorite songs. And there were quite a few of these lists. And on one of the lists, I saw the song On the Way Up that I was just talking about. It said On the Way Up, Clown Alley. And I thought, wow, well, this is kind of cool. I guess Kurt liked that song. And of course, with the Melvins, we did some touring with Nirvana. I don't think Kurt ever put together the fact that I was in Clown Alley because he never mentioned it to me. So that was a pretty neat thing to discover. And I went, wow, okay, well, that just shows you, you make music, you put it out, you have no idea who's actually listening to it. Another kind of interesting path of influence that this song On the Way Up took was in 2019. I didn't know about this either, but a friend of mine, Bill Herzog, a great bass player who lives up in lives in Seattle, and who I played with when I was playing with Sun about 20 years ago or whatever. He also plays with Jesse Sykes and Earth. He said, "Hey, let's go and hang out with Kim Thale, who's a friend of mine." And I called him up and I said, "Hey, how'd you like to hang out with Mark?" And he said, "Sure, let's do that." So we went out and had a nice couple of hours just sitting there shooting the breeze. And at one point, Kim said, "Hey, you had that band Clown Alley, didn't you?" And I went, "Yeah, I did actually." And he goes, "That one song you guys did about the elevator going up, that On the Way song, was an awesome song." He said, "I listened to the hell out of that song, and a bunch of my friends did also." So that was a really cool thing to hear, because once again, I had no idea that they were listening, or he was listening, or anybody else was. So if you're out there making music, it's always interesting to find out who's going to be listening to it. Next song on the record is a song called Uranium Miner's Daughter. This song has some background, I think probably directly from Dave Duran, the singer, because he was from New Mexico. He was in a band out there called Jerry's Kids, and I think maybe he was in a band called Eyeball, although maybe that was a band after Clown Alley. I'm not really sure about that, but once again, here's an example of great surreal evocative lyrics from Dave. Postcard Sunset, Airbrushed Beauty, Indian Curios, Old West Fallacy, Uranium Miner's Daughter, turquoise jewelry made for tourists passing through an outer province, pueblos empty, freight trains full of copper, full of gold, Uranium Miner's Daughter. So once again, this does have a flavor of a protest type of concept behind it, and rightly so, I would say. The next tune is called Pet of a Pig. And this was another crowd favorite too. People really liked this one. And this one also has kind of a sort of musical trope that became very popular that I picked up on during the mid-80 time, which is basically having really slow parts to a song alternating with really fast parts to a song, kind of staccato starting and stopping, dead silences punctuated by hyper-fast activity. And Pet of a Pig is a great example of that. And once again, lyrics by Dave, which are more or less observational about the kind of places that he would deliver packages to, and the kind of people that he would meet, and the kind of behavior that those people would have for him. More or less outright disdain, looking at him as like an outsider type. A variety of secretaries up in buildings, I would imagine. Dressed right, act right, really got yourself in gear. You are the pet of a pig. I guess that would be, the boss would be the pig, the secretary would be the pet of the pig. And I always used to laugh hilariously when he'd be playing it, when he would be singing that. I could hardly keep a straight face. Dress right, act right, really got yourself in gear. Take no risks and you got no fears. You are the pet of a pig. Wallow in the paper behind your partition. That's so good. Never in the red, wear a yellow tie. The latest contract occupies your mind. You are the pet of a pig. Well done, Dave. Next song is a song called The Gray Men, and once again is an example of the super fast punctuated by the ultra slow, almost abstract, reactive construction. I must have been getting influenced by Dave because this is sort of about men in suits. Gray men in their gray suits making statements saying nothing, black cars going nowhere, private bars getting sober, little men with big ideas playing games with no winner, the big smile and the right tie, the blue background for your psychology. This is the second time ties have been mentioned on this record. So I don't know what that means. I mean, you can take it with a grain of salt. So in the 80s, in the mid 80s in San Francisco, I mean, the greed is good thing was alive and well, and we definitely noticed it. I mean, you could not notice it. Just take a walk down Market Street at the time and you would see every person that you knew was fairly loathsome, more or less. Everyone kind of showing out for each other, probably loaded on coke half the time, shiny mid-80s BMW sitting in their little garage somewhere, and they were loathsome types, more or less, you know. And also, now these were like real estate people. The dot-com boom was probably just basically getting birthed in this very place, and just imagine as a person in your 20s that had any kind of outsidery ideas, you were seeing all these kind of people around you, and then at the same time, whenever you turned on the radio, you were hearing, "We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll." So it was fairly revolting. And then you were also hearing Huey Lewis and the News, and just you know, what else? I mean, I can't... Cyndi Lauper. What was hot in 86? Oh. Phil Collins, yeah. They were all listening to Sade, high as hell on coke, I'm sure. You know, Sade was probably their wind down music. Yeah. And Phil Collins was their let's get jacked up music. Yeah. Maybe. I think it probably was. Just awful stuff. Kenny Loggins, I mean, this kind of stuff. So at the same time, we were probably jealous of that because we couldn't have that, because we were just... Which brings me directly to this next song, which I wrote the lyrics to, called Envy. Everything that I want, everything that I need, everything that I want to possess is within someone else's reach. So there you have it. We were jealous. So all we could do was write little punk rock songs, or metal songs, or crossover songs, or just any kind of song as long as it was loud and fast. And angry. Except we weren't actually very angry. We kind of had a lot of fun playing this stuff, and we weren't an angry band, and we weren't trying to get people mad. And people had a lot of fun at our shows, so it was a good time. The next song is a song called Theme. This is a song where Lori actually came up directly with the bass line. That kind of famous bass line in it. It's one note. And Lori we were practicing, Lori plugged it in, she started playing that riff. And I think she forgot it instantly. But I used to always record all of our practices, and for about a half an hour I kept going, no, play the other part. She couldn't remember it. And then anyway, took it home, listened to it, she got it, and I put this drony guitar thing over it. The drummer Justin came up with this great angular drum thing to play off of it. And Dave came up with some really awesome lyrics that is basically a commentary on homeless veterans, which once again reaches deep into the protest area. And there are great lyrics on this one. He watches the sun rise, it's been too long since he shut his eyes. Inside an alley, away from the suits and ties. The ties come back again. So how many times have ties been mentioned in this? I don't know. It's kind of it's a thing, isn't it?
It's a theme.
Maybe the song theme should have just been called Ties. Maybe we should have called the album Ties. We should have called the band Ties. It could have just been Ties. The title of it could have just been Ties, and then
Ties of Chaos.
Ties. Yeah, Circus of Ties. That's what it could have been. So anyway, this is another song that I think might have been one of Kurt Cobain's favorite songs. I think maybe it ended up on one of those lists also. I do seem to remember that. Maybe I'm just hopeful and imagining it. Maybe somebody can correct me on that. But somebody did actually send me a link to... There was some Nirvana album that came out after Kurt died, and it had a bunch of outtakes from rehearsals and stuff like that. And somebody sent me a link to it and said, hey, do you know about this beginning of this song that they start to jam on? And he said, I think this is the song theme from the Clown Alley record. And I went, really? I don't know anything about that. And so I went and dug it out from this thing and listened to it a few times. And it does sound briefly like, for maybe 3 or 4 bars, Kurt starts playing the guitar part to this song. But maybe there's experts out there that can enlighten me. Either way, I'm not too bothered about it. I mean, I know he already loved one of my songs. The song theme is maybe the most atmospheric song on this record for me personally, and kind of indicates maybe where the band would have been heading. It's kind of Gang of Four influenced, if I may say so. I was listening to Solid Gold quite a bit about that time. Killing Joke also. So I think that the influences of those things are coming through there. And also it's got kind of, the guitar part has kind of like a Robert Fripp type of influence to it. The next song is a song called The Second Day. And is in one of my favorite time signatures, which is 6/8, and it has kind of a waltzy feel to it. And this is kind of an abstract sort of stream of consciousness type of thing. And interestingly, the other song that I wrote completely called Envy, this is kind of a cousin to that song because it's got lines about jealousy in it. So I must have been envious and jealous of something that I can't actually remember. Maybe it was of crappy bands being able to play at the Stone and my band couldn't play there. Something stupid like that, probably. But I do like this song, and I think also the Melvins did cover this song at one point too. So that was influential enough in some way for them to play that. Although I don't think I ever heard them play that song, but it kind of got on my radar that they did. The very last song on here is a song that was on the cassette. Actually, a few of these songs were on the cassette. Let's see. The Prey, Crazy Eyes didn't make it on there. The Prey and Theme are the only songs that are on the album that were on the cassette. And The Prey seems to come from more or less a nightmare that maybe Dave had where he was just being chased. I think a lot of people have these kinds of dreams by some unknown thing. And once again, excellent lyrics by Dave. Me, a small bug, far below, underfoot, over walls, through yards, alone, with a predator. So abstract, evocative, and excellent. And thank you for your contribution, Dave. Nice work, sir. And so that brings me to the end of the Clown Alley record. A little bit of the minor history of our live playing. In the beginning, you can see the kind of bands that we played with. And progressively, as we played, we were probably a band from maybe 85 to 88, I would say. Maybe just about 3 years. Went through a lot of personnel changes. The very first version of Clown Alley, which a lot of you may not know, was 3 girls and me. And there was a girl singer named Maxine, and maybe it was her girlfriend Becky, who later would play in the Lunatics, was a drummer, and Lori. So we had 3 girls and we had me. I was writing all the songs at that point. And this was before even Neil got in the band. So Neil was actually our second drummer. And we started to get noticed pretty quickly because we were the only band that had 3 girls in it that was playing this kind of music. And so we had a couple of live reviews from the alternative Bible that was Maximum Rock and Roll. And Maximum Rock and Roll suggested that Clown Alley was a really promising band if they would just get rid of the guy in the band. Of course, they didn't know the guy was writing all the songs and making the band sound the way that it did. Anyway, we laughed heartedly at that. And eventually, Becky and Maxine were not going to make the cut. Becky, it was more of a stamina thing. She would play about 3 songs and then had to kind of lie down onto a fainting couch or something for about 10 minutes. Once she took a little rest, she was all ready to go again. Maxine didn't quite have the voice to get over the loud stuff, and there were some personality things as usual in 1 million bands. So they left, and we got Neil. Neil is the drummer on the cassette here, and we did play quite a few gigs with Neil. And then Neil decided he wanted to go, and then we put up the aforementioned ad to find a new drummer, dedicated and loud. And we found Justin Clayton. And Justin Clayton played on the record, played on a tour that went extremely wrong. We went on a Southwest tour, playing down through San Diego, LA, New Mexico, down to El Paso, where Lori got some kind of food poisoning, blood poisoning. We have no idea what it is. She ended up in the hospital. And so then we had a dead drive all the way back from El Paso to San Francisco. And at the very end of that, Justin said, see ya. He was done and had no further interest in doing anything related to that again. I'm not sure if he joined another band, but we lost contact with him completely. And there was a point maybe about 20 years ago when I was trying to contact him in relation to the Clown Alley CD being issued. No dice, couldn't find him. So Justin, if you're out there, thank you for your input into this little adventure, and I hope you're doing good. Anyway, so we were still a band, Lori, myself, and Dave Duran, and we were still looking for a drummer and still had our little ads up everywhere looking for one. And Matt Fillmore, who was the drummer for Sacrilege BC, who was also a band on Alchemy Records, said, hey, I'll play for you guys. I'll fill in until you can find a permanent drummer. And we said, wow, thank you. Because Matt was a great drummer, as you can hear on the Sacrilege record, a primed and a perfect metal guy who loved playing crossover music also. And so we booked a little tour, went up to the Northwest, and Matt played with us and was a great player. And here's actually a picture of us and Matt. This is the very last version of Clown Alley that went out and played. And this was taken in Portland, I believe. And he played with us up until we played our very last show, which was also, ironically, of course, our biggest show, because the shows that we were playing got bigger and bigger as we got more attention. I was writing new material, thinking of the future and what we were going to be doing, and even thinking of just having Matt be our permanent drummer, because he was working out really well and was excited and incredibly dependable. The Salt Lake City show with Suicidal Tendencies was a one-off show. We were going all the way out there to play. Played at some kind of horticultural center or something. This was a big show. Suicidal Tendencies was coming up and getting hot and in demand, and were playing bigger shows themselves. Went out there, played the gig. It was a great gig. I was really excited to play at a show that big. It wasn't a huge gig, maybe 1,500 people or something like that, but to us it was a really big gig. And played a great set, and we all felt pretty good about it. When we got back to San Francisco, Dave called me up and said, I don't want to do this. I don't like doing this. And after me kind of digging out a more detailed explanation, his answer was, I don't want to be a rock star. To which I kind of laughed pretty heartedly, because to me that whole concept was about the most remote result for what we were doing imaginable. I in no way expected that that was going to be any kind of a result with what we were doing. I thought at the very least, well, we could get on a bigger tour, maybe we could find a way to actually make a living doing this, which to me would be just basically a dream come true. Well, I can do this and not have a regular job. That would be absolutely incredible. But for Dave, he just didn't have it in him, and he was just, I respected him. I didn't call him out about it. I just went, okay, that was that. And so for me, I was thinking, okay, now we need to find a drummer and we need to find a singer. And events were also transpiring completely aside from what was happening with Clown Alley to ensure that my adventure in San Francisco was coming to a close. I was looking at 1988 coming up, and as that was coming up, I was looking at my relationship with Lori coming to an end. I was working full-time as a cab driver, And also my label that I had with Victor Hayden was also coming to an end because Victor was exhibiting unpredictable, confused behavior, becoming paranoid as a person, and more or less just having psychotic episodes which were not manageable. That I do explain in my video all about Alchemy Records with Victor. So if you want a deeper dive on that, please check out that video for more information. So that is the history of one of the more obscure bands ever, Clown Alley, but it was my band and it was fun. And I think other people had fun too, as it echoes down through the decades and the eons, or not. So one of the cool things that's happened is when I was talking to my lovely wife, Jennifer. For those of you who are more familiar with me, you will be familiar with Jennifer's artwork because Jennifer has designed all of my album covers and copious amounts of art for me. And when she saw this cassette here, she hand drew a picture of that cassette here. So there is one of these drawings that she has done of the cassette, and I'm putting it into my Bandcamp shop. The links are below. So this is hand drawn. I think it's pretty cool and captures the spirit of Clown Alley and its tape spooling out over the decades. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe since it helps the channel grow. You can also buy me a coffee or some kind of libation to my liking. You can also subscribe to my Patreon page. I have a whole bunch of cool stuff going on over there. A ton of unreleased stuff. I'm also doing reviews of my entire record collection, providing needle drops of that stuff. I'm also working up a lost album over there that is created from tracks that were recorded during my Value of Decay album tracking sessions that you can take a look at. You can also find unreleased material and also live material over there. You can also visit my Bandcamp page, and there's plenty of stuff over there. There's vinyl. I think there's still vinyl available over there. So get over there quick and check it out. All the links are going to be below this video. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you again soon.